Stefano Domenicali, who is the CEO of Formula 1, has said that he is interested in scrapping the free practice sessions that drivers have across the Grand Prix weekend in order to give more competitive running to the drivers and to provide better entertainment for the fans. Now, he has said that he is a supporter of the cancellation of free practice sessions, which are great use for the engineers, but the public doesn't like them. Now, I disagree with his comments saying the public doesn't like them. I think most Formula 1 fans, if you're a fan of the sport, you will watch the free practice sessions as you are generally interested in lap times, car development, seeing how these teams perform. If you're more of a casual fan and you just like to watch the Grand Prix on a Sunday, then you probably won't watch these sessions and this won't have an effect on you. So I think saying the public doesn't like these sessions is wrong, and this is clearly from a money standpoint. Bringing more competitive racing in on a Friday can allow Formula 1 to charge higher ticket prices and to produce more money. So what is the format that Stefano is proposing? It is this. So Friday will be free practice 1 and a qualifying session like we have currently with Q1, Q2 and Q3. Now this will result in the race on Sunday. Now that is fixed. Where things change up is Saturday will be a standalone day where we will have a sprint quali, which isn't sprint qualifying like we normally have as in a race. That is sprint qualifying, so qualifying for the sprint race. Now we'll get into the details in this a little bit later. Will that be one shot? Will that be Q1, Q2, Q3 elimination? That's up for debate and hasn't been set yet. Then we'll have the normal sprint race, and then on Sunday we will have the typical Grand Prix. Now this is just the proposed format at the current stage. Now my concern was for the drivers. I thought the drivers would be hugely against this. They don't get that massive amount of time to practice in the cars. They can't test outside of Grand Prix weekends. But George Russell came out surprisingly and said, no, I don't think it's fair that F1 has 3 times the amount of practice you have in Formula 2 and F3. They should be the ones getting more practice. Formula 2 and Formula 3 get significantly less practice time than Formula 1, and obviously they are younger drivers, and Russell, coming up from those formulas fairly recently, obviously has great experience, and his opinion I would rate pretty highly. So George Russell doesn't particularly think that 3 free practice sessions is required. Pierre Gasly also agreed with George and said 3 isn't needed from a driving point of view. Generally speaking, I think 1, maybe 2 maximum is enough for all of us. Now we know they spent hours in a simulator before, and obviously they will have the free practice sessions to get used to the car, which they obviously don't drive in the simulator. I was pretty surprised about these comments, to be honest. I thought they'd want more practice, but maybe they are just so comfortable in these cars and they're so used to these circuits. A lot of drivers have been driving these circuits for the past 10 years, whether that's on simulators, in junior formats. So current Formula 1 drivers don't actually think the current free practice sessions are needed. So obviously the current layout, we have an hour for FP1 and FP2 on the Friday, FP3 on the Saturday, and then you have the normal qualifying, and the Sunday is the Grand Prix. Now if we look at what is currently the sprint format, we're having this across 6 weekends this season from the 3 last year. We have FP1 and qualifying for the sprint race. Then on the Saturday we have FP2 and the sprint race, and then the sprint race sets the grid for the Sunday Grand Prix. Now this seems to be the format that's getting pushed. Obviously it's doubled from last year of how many races we have. Now I'm much more of a fan of this new proposed format rather than this format. I don't like the sprint format interfering with the Grand Prix. I would rather have qualifying and the Grand Prix as is, and a separate standalone one-shot quali and then a sprint race kept separate on the Saturday. So with sprint quali and then the sprint on the Saturday, that would mean they are completely separate. And what I think would be good is to have a one-shot qualifying. I think the sprint race is a little bit dull with the 1/3 of the Grand Prix length. In terms of strategy, it's not that interesting. All drivers use the same strategy, and it's normally the soft tyre which lasts them to the end. You could bring in a mandatory pit stop, but then that would go against the whole tyres and sustainability that they're trying to reduce. You could bring in a new hypersoft tyre like Lando Norris suggested last season, but again, sustainability, money, you're going to have to produce a new tyre, which I can't really see Formula 1 doing with their current vision to go carbon neutral by 2030. So let's have a look into the one-shot qualifying. Now, if you're a newer Formula 1 fan, you may not know that one-shot qualifying ever existed, but back in 2003, they did have one-shot qualifying, and there was sort of pros and cons to it, but we've had the current qualifying format since 2010, and yeah, it's a big favourite. A lot of people like it. There's no issues with that format, so I wouldn't change that for the Grand Prix. But with the sprint race, why not mix things up a bit? I think the Q1, Q2 and Q3, it does drag on a little bit for a sprint race, so I think this would be a quick and easy method to get straight into the sprint race. Now personally, I wouldn't even have them as separate sessions really. I'd have them like back to back. I'd have everyone do their one-shot qualifying lap, go into the garage and then come out to do your formation lap. I don't think you need like a 4 or 5 hour break between them like you do in normal sessions. As you'd have part firme and things like that. I think you could get it all done in one go. So what are the pros and cons of one-shot qualifying? Now I think the pros are better coverage. Now I love the current qualifying format. Now one thing it does lack is the coverage. They can only normally focus on 1, maybe 2 drivers when there could be 5, 6, 7 drivers on track, all setting personal best lap times. Now this would completely remove that, as one driver would be doing a quick lap at a time on track, so they could really focus on that one driver and get a lot of attention. Now the drivers would like this, I think. The media, sponsors, stakeholders, they'd get a lot of advertising for every single driver rather than just focusing on the sort of top 5 qualifiers, which is normally the case in qualifying. Another pro is there is no interference. Now we'll get onto the cons later, but every driver will have a clear track to set one lap time. Everyone has the same clear track. Weather might change, track evolution might change, but everyone has a clean track. No one's going to be interfered by a crash. If there is a crash, it'll get red flagged, they'll clear the damage, and then the next driver will go out. Each driver is guaranteed a run in clear air for their one lap. So similar, you're not going to get any traffic during your qualifying lap. It's fairly common during qualifying for cars to be parked to either side of the track, which is a little bit dangerous and it definitely impedes drivers' performance, so that'll be completely removed, which would be good to see. There's more risk. Now I don't mean this from sort of a danger perspective as being a positive, but you have one lap to produce your best times. Now drivers will notice and they will push that one lap to the absolute limit, and there's just more chance of making errors, so the better drivers will be rewarded, which I think everyone would like to see. Now there are some cons to one-shot qualifying. The main one is track evolution. So as you know, a track will get quicker throughout a session. Now one-shot qualifying evolution won't be massive because there's only one car doing a single lap, whereas during a Grand Prix, 20 drivers doing laps after another, the track does get a lot quicker. So there will be track evolution, and to mitigate this, I would say you send the drivers out from a reverse constructors or reversed FP1 order. So typically the slower drivers will go out last, the faster drivers will go out first, so the slower drivers will have a slight advantage. This will make things a little bit more interesting for the sprint on the weekend, as the drivers at the back of the field will have a better track to set their lap time. Now the con, I kind of mentioned it before, is to do with risk and increased crashes. Now drivers have one lap, they'll push to the absolute limits, so we might see quite a lot of red flags, drivers putting it in the wall. And yeah, this could really sort of dull things down and slow it if we get a lot of red flags. Normally in qualifying, we don't really get that many red flags. There's been a bit of drama recently in terms of if a driver brings out a red or yellow flag during qualifying, they currently have no punishment. Should they be punished for that? Now that's a topic for a separate video, but yeah, that wouldn't impact any other driver, which would be a pro. But I think there would be a lot more crashes and mistakes in one-shot qualifying. Another con, depending on how you see it is weather dependent. You might get rain at the start of the session and it dries throughout. It might start sunny and rain throughout, and this will mean the drivers are hugely impacted by that weather. So the first 5 drivers might go out, the 2 Williams, 2 Hasses and an AlphaTauri, and they all set a quick lap time on the softs. Then it starts raining, everyone puts on the inters, and they are all well off the pace. Now, is this unfair? Yes, but is Formula 1 unfair? It's never going to be even playing field for everyone. Currently in the current qualifying format, drivers will set different lap times depending on the track. Think of Kevin Magnussen from last year. Now I put this as a con just because I think it's not massively fair for drivers, and it's not often the weather changes hugely throughout qualifying, so I don't think this is a massive issue. So that's the new proposed weekend structure. What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm quite a big fan of this, to be honest. I'd definitely like to see it over the current sprint weekend format. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.